Well, good morning, everyone. It's Nancy at the Open Gate, and we're at week 2 or 3 of your Operation Social Isolation, depending on where you are. And I imagine by now many of you have gotten through the basics of this staggering shift that we're all going through. You probably worked out your tech. People are settled into their home offices. You've got people safely isolated. You've started figuring things out. But I want to share with you today, I think there's a lot that's still going on and that things that we can't see. And those are the things that I'd like to take a few minutes today to help you with. So let's get started. And today, just talking about being and finding your strength and being the rock for your team that they need you to be. And what does that look like? And how can we make an impact? And you've heard me say this last week, but it bears repeating. I think that it feels like everything's out of control right now, and as a leader you may not feel like you have much ability to influence, but I just want to remind you that you sincerely do have the ability and the power to influence how the direction things go. And it's simple things like how you talk to people, the things that you say, the things that you choose to focus on, the ways that you express your energy, all have an impact on the people around you. And it's just a matter of recognizing that within ourselves and knowing that you can make a difference. I think the biggest battle is in our mind, and that's the one that's the hardest spot. So a couple things on being the rock for your team. 3 points today I wanted to share is, number one, that it's created a lot of different types of losses. Wanted to give you a sense of what that's all about. Want you to be aware of some of the hidden damages and how you can connect the dots with your team. And then lastly, to demonstrate a few things. And what does that really look like? Things like empathy, how we're communicating, and then giving that sense of control to people. So the first thing to remember, and I think we don't call it out enough, is the fact that this social isolation and the dramatic impact on everything has created a lot of different types of losses. I mean, we certainly have the people whose families have been directly impacted by this virus, and they perhaps have lost a loved one or someone who's gone through a horrific experience, and that's a huge loss in and of itself. It's important to, and we see that and we recognize it, but it's important too to recognize that people are losing jobs, and that's real obvious, and we're seeing that. At the same time, people's lives have been disrupted. Weddings aren't happening. The big game that somebody was going to be the star pitcher or the basketball star doesn't get the opportunity. People are missing out on family gatherings. Relationships are changing. Our routines are changing, losing our ability to stay healthy and fit because we don't have our routine of going to the gym. Even all of those things, it may seem small on some respects, but those are all losses. And so it's important not to minimize those. It's easy to see the big losses, but remember the little losses have an impact too. And they all can create a certain sense of grief and loss. And so it's important as a manager and leader to recognize that and really get that, because it happens especially in the workplace as well. We've lost our routine, lost our friends. All of those things have an impact. And so that impact of loss tends to create a lot of hidden damage, and we don't see that. It's important to remember that people maybe look fine on the outside, and a lot of things though might be going on that we're not seeing. Person could be smiling at you saying, how are you doing? And they could be suffering from crippling anxiety or panic attacks or depression or thoughts of suicide. And we're all good at putting the game face on, but those are the things that might be going on inside. Someone might be suffering chronic pain, sleeplessness, and all the impacts of that. So it's important to check in with your team often. You know, really sincerely be asking people how they're doing and wait for an answer and ask follow-up questions and make sure you're investing the time to know and let people know that you definitely care. And let them know you understand as a team that this is having a huge impact on everyone's psyche, and just call it out. It's one of those things I think we tend to sweep under the rug. We don't want to talk about emotions in the workplace. But I think at a time like this, as a leader, again, it's really important to call these things out. Let them know that you're aware that everyone's psyche has been hit hard, and you want to just recognize that and support people through that. And then offering resources, and the best one is your employee assistance program. If you have that through your employer, make sure your employees know that number, that they can get help and support. And then I think the biggest thing is just, it's okay not to feel okay. And again, calling it out, recognizing it is critical. And many of you have probably seen this over the years. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and David Kessler gave us a framework years ago to talk about these things. And again, grief and loss can, this cycle, these emotions can impact people no matter what the loss is, big or small. And it's important not to minimize those things. And we don't necessarily, not everybody's going to feel all of these things. Not everybody's going to experience them in the same way. It's not a linear process, but it's just a framework. And those things might be just denial. We don't even want to believe this is happening. Certainly anger, I think we see a lot of that. Bargaining, boy, if only I do this, then maybe this will happen. Depression, the crippling sadness, and then finally, and I don't think any of us are there yet, but acceptance of a situation. So again, making it okay to talk about these sorts of things, providing a worksheet to your team saying, hey, these might be some things you're experiencing, can be a real help at a time like this. And the last point I want to share with you is just, again, as a leader, the ways that you can be a rock for your team are certainly showing empathy. And that's a really hard concept to get. It's not sympathy, it's not pity. It's simply showing people that you really understand and can feel what they're feeling. And you may not, understand everything they're going through, but you can certainly understand some of the feelings. And first thing to do is just simply acknowledging it and reflecting what you're seeing and what they're feeling, what they might be feeling. And then make sure you're communicating often. I think we sometimes think we put something out there in an email or we mention it in a meeting and that's good enough. And just remember, the more the better. If you think you've communicated enough, just tell yourself it's probably not enough and I need to say more. Use multiple channels, not only the face-to-face, the video conferencing, email, texting, as often as you can, trying to get those messages of support out to your team. And lastly, just that sense of control. And how do you do that, right? I mean, when we go through a huge change like we've all gone through, it impacts everybody's sense of control. And because these events we can't control. And so the one thing you can do for your team is simply giving them opportunities to give input. Ask your team for their opinion. Give people an opportunity to make choices when they can, instead of just directing everything. The more opportunities you can give people to that, they'll get that little sense of control back, and it starts to help people feel better about a situation and better about their team. So keep those things in mind. Remember, we'll all get through this together. Stay connected, stay encouraged. Remember that we will have complimentary live Zoom calls every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Pacific time. Next week, we'll be focusing deeper on this particular topic, being the rock that your team needs now. And again, it's an opportunity to get some information, connect with your peers, hear what other people are going through, and I think that's so absolutely necessary for this time. So I hope you join us. Here's the link. And if you miss this in this call or this webinar, just go to opengateresources.com, opengateresources.com, our event calendar. It will be listed there and you can sign up that way. So hang in there, and we hope to see you next week. Thanks, everyone.